Um, Doris and Gareth, your presentation now.
Yeah, no problem. Okay. Can you see that all right?
Absolutely. Brilliant.
Great.
Thanks.
Okay, fantastic. Okay. Super. So yeah, thanks for having us. Gareth and I are representing today a wider research team. So there's myself from London Metropolitan University, Gareth and Harriet from UWE, and Sylvia from Oxford Brookes. And really what I'm going to introduce, and I'll really try and keep this to an absolute maximum of 15 minutes, because I'd quite like to hear your views, discussions, etc. But what we're aiming to do is introduce our research project around leadership, language, and visual interpretation, and particularly show how, or argue why, the use of visual methods will help us to advance research into different languages of leadership. Okay. So, as some of you may know, I've been working for probably over 10 years to not only bring language as important in research on the agenda of researchers of leadership, but particularly to try and make our understanding of leadership more inclusive by empowering different languages. And I'm talking here about different languages in terms of different national languages, different languages within languages, different discourses. So to really take a view of language as heterogeneous and carrying diverse meanings, where arguably sometimes leadership may not translate, may not be meaningful at all, but to give power to those, and also, where important, to give power and emphasis to alternative potential meanings. And this is not just an argument that I have run. It is an argument that pervades wider leadership studies, but also management and organisation studies. Yeah, where the general Anglocentrism and the power and dominance of the English language, particularly used by US, UK researchers, and in which we read leadership theory, in which we read studies that have been published around leadership and organisation studies, how this Anglocentrism really hampers innovative theory development, not only around leadership, but all other management and organisational concepts, because it favours the particular presentation of an issue, of a phenomenon like leadership, through the culturally imbued meanings that are carried within the English language, and that are very much rooted within Anglocentric cultural traditions. Okay, and to become more inclusive in our practice of leadership research, but also in our understanding of leadership, we must problematize this power, this dominance of the English language, because otherwise all our conceptualizations, approaches to leadership become and remain imprisoned in English, and shaping norms and expectations of leadership that are far too Anglocentric in their cultural orientation and meaning. Okay, so the argument has been there, not only leadership studies, but also wider organisation studies, for at least over a decade now. And over the last, certainly, sort of 15 years that I've been writing around this and trying to actually get funding for a research project that helps to shake up the field by really exploring and giving voice to other languages of leadership. I have throughout this time been struck by how little importance others see this, and how happy, so to speak, funders are to continue to fund projects that do not look critically at the use of English and the dominance of English and the imprisonment within the English language of research projects. So in a very long effort to fund a kind of project that goes into different languages in different countries within the same organization, we as a research team, so this is Gareth, Harriet, Sylvia and myself, have with sort of renewed energy, maybe in the light of rethinking, rebooting our energy coming out of COVID to try and get this sort of agenda funded. We applied for funding with the SAMS BAM Research and Capacity Building Grant, and we were awarded funding. So we can finally go ahead with this larger project that builds on the sort of work that we and others in the field have done more incrementally in the past. But we think the main reason why it has been funded is because we are suggesting that in order to bring more sensitivity to language in research, in leadership research, we need to draw on other methods, okay, and particularly visual methods as a more sophisticated way to deal and tackle translation issues that capture cultural nuances better. So this really is also placed in the context of, in our view, continuing methodological challenges for leadership studies. Again, the arguments are not new, that leadership studies over-relies on your sort of standard interviews. We've seen, obviously, research in this particular session that is more innovative, that looks at also observational as well as conversational methods. But we think this element of visual is particularly pertinent to recognize the complexities and give emphasis, bring out of the shadows the complexities of interlingual translation, which really PhD researchers struggle and at times don't recognize how important it is to pay very careful attention to translation and to the difficult decisions that have to be done when doing research in one language, translating it into another for publication, particularly the English language, and how we need to pay more attention to that and share this with researchers, early career, PhD, experienced researchers to really help them make more informed choices, to recognize the importance of careful interlingual translation work, particularly within cultural leadership studies. And the way we are suggesting to do it is to draw on one of our project members' expertise around visual methods, Harriet Short, where we are going to be introducing the practice of asking prior to conversations with participants, but we'll be asking them to take photos of things that to them represent leadership, and particularly we're focusing here on inclusive leadership. Because again, inclusive leadership is another one of these words that is increasingly popular, yet that we don't often think carefully enough about how does it translate or not across different cultural, social contexts, and languages. So we have been funded to go into a multinational company and to conduct visual and interview field work across different sites in different countries within different languages. And as I said, the visual aspect of it will be that participants will go away, take images of something they connect with leadership, in particular inclusive leadership, and then bring that into the conversations, the one-to-one interviews, to really talk from within their own world, language, sense making, and talk about issues that for them represent inclusive forms of leadership. And what we're also hoping is through this extra visual aspect of our data gathering methodology is to enable participants to also say, look, you know, leadership as in this image that doesn't have the same meaning for me as it might have for my organization, or inclusivity means XYZ, and that's different to what the organization is trying to build, trying to create, trying to impose. We will be working very carefully with translators. Again, something that often is hidden or missed or maybe not there in many research studies that work across different languages. And that might be looking at cultural nuances within organizations. Not often are translators part of the research team. So we will engage with several translators, and they will form and be members of the research team, because for us, and this is something that we want to empower, translation is a dialogic process rather than an instrumental process. Okay, it pays attention to the difficult decisions that are being made when meaning is translated, reverbalized across different languages, and that is crucial in order to really think about what is it that we are capturing here. What aspects of the individual's practice are we capturing? Are we able to translate? How are we able to compare this across different languages? And therefore to bring the social cultural dynamics of translation out of this the shadows. Now, once we do have the data, so not only the images that have been gathered, but also the recordings of the conversations that happen with individuals and the researchers when they use their photographs to talk about their practice that engage with in the organization. We will then apply again one of our colleagues, Harriet's innovative method of careful visual analysis, where we pay attention not only to the discursive meanings that are brought forward in the interviews by the individual, so where they talk about this image means such and such for myself, but we're going to engage in some more archaeological analysis across the images, across the participants, to unearth and to piece together, to reconstruct implicit understandings and values that cut across these images, that cut across the participants. Okay, and really what that helps us is it will give us across different levels an ability to delve into participants' individual and overlapping social meanings of leadership, or indeed of other concepts that might come to the fore if we empower them and to look at their particular practices and meanings and images. And as I said, that might bring out words equivalent but different from leadership. So I've already said most that is on here, and I will pause in a second because I think I've taken up all of my time. I think I might leave it this slide up. Very happy to talk more about the grounded visual pattern analysis, which brings together dialogic, ecologic analysis, if that's something that people are interested in. But yeah, if I sort of leave that up, maybe, Olga, and then invite views, questions, is that all right? Although now I won't be able to see the audience, will I? If I leave this up. Let me close it and then try and upload it in the way that you mentioned earlier.
Let me do it. I just took the screenshot and I'll do it for you. I'll do it for you. We are taking some questions. The slide, your project. I do have so many things to share. Really, I will abuse my power of moderator. It's just the discussion, on the intercultural differences and the different cultural traditions in approaching leadership have been running in our networking sessions for 2 days now. And this is King Young. She brought it up, and I could relate to it as I've been for long denying the idea of studying leadership in the context of my own research, because as a Russian citizen and Russian, being born in Russia, right? I just don't understand the idea of leadership, and it was very difficult for me to just grasp it. This is a very foreign word, which is adjusted to the business environment, political environment, and been adopted. But a collective country, which was collective country for a long period of its time, this is something quite alien, and it was a conceptual difficulty I was experiencing when using the idea in my research. So I think that what you're doing, we've been just discussing for 2 days, and voila.
Yeah. And one of the problems is, of course, that it's and one of the reasons why we are starting the conversation with photos rather than asking a question around leadership is so that we are allowing participants to step out of that space of leadership discourse that is in many countries imposed and very alien, but we don't enough really explore that alienness and inclusive leadership, any of these sort of jargons, these kind of really popular sort of phrases. That's the same, and with it often comes a level of positivity that almost doesn't allow, and we want to empower our participants to also talk about the difficulties or the complexities or the not making sense, and visual photographs taken and then discussions elicited through looking at these images should help and empower participants to feel confident, comfortable, to maybe stay in that little bit more critical space if they want to.
Absolutely. This is I'm very looking forward to see what's going to come up with your project. Fatima, you have a question or a comment? Please go on.
Yes, it's a question.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, what's your criteria for selecting the translators?
Yeah.
Whom you are they, for example, academics? Are they practitioners? Are they linguists? That's my question.
I think that's a really good question, and a really important question. And again, we don't ask often enough, what was the process of generating the particular data that you have? What was the process of translating? Now, the way we are going to do it, so our project officially starts, the funded project officially starts in January. We are in conversations with multinational companies, and we are going to be working with the company to identify what particular sites they would like to do this research in, because they might find, there's some communication issues, as they might want to say, or some translation issues or implementation issues in particular subsidiaries. Once we know the countries that we are going to be going into in that particular company, we will then contact translators who are going to be speaking the first language within that particular country. Although I don't want to take a too homogeneous view on national language, we will have to see where within a particular country that is, but we will try to work as local as is possible. There will also be early career researchers who will be brought into the project once we know exactly where the project is. Again, who will be native speakers, who are then going to work closely with the translators and be doing the particular field work there and working with the wider team. Because a sub-part that I haven't talked about here is capacity building. So it is not just doing this research, but we do this research project in order to make more explicit what the issues are, what good practice is, and how visual methods may help with some of the translation issues that you face. And then we will also be creating a sort of open database that is available to other researchers. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, and one quick question. I don't know much about grounded visual pattern analysis, but is semiotics a part of it?
So grounded visual pattern analysis, and again, this is Harriet Short's a baby, so to speak, as part of our research project. The particular way that we are going to explore is I mentioned there will be different levels of analysis. There will be a more discursive analysis, so looking at the meanings that are being created within the conversation between researcher and individual, which again are multi-level, because the participant will bring in, will have made or chosen a particular photograph that may have at that point in time carried meaning. When they then come together and have a conversation with a researcher, that through the dialogue is going to continue to shape the meaning, and we're looking at that. We are then also, and this is a grounded visual pattern analysis, we're looking then beyond the individual sequence, the individual interview, and we're going to look across. So looking at patterns and to unearth patterns across the participants, and the patterns across will not be seen as separate from the individual meaning, but are helping us to reveal maybe across the both the conversations within a particular country, patterns that link to particular social meanings that might be to do with the wider social culture, with history, with the sorts of things that Olga mentioned that might be to some extent shared across participants. There might also be patterns across different countries that have to do with the organization. Okay, but those that sort of deeper looking then across patterns, across images, across the sense making that happened in the individual conversations, that then all together provides quite a rich picture. And that is what Harriet Short and Sam Warren have defined, and we're using their meaning as grounded visual pattern analysis.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fatima. Brilliant question. And do we have any more questions here? Not right now. Not right now. I don't see right now questions, comments in the chat. But Doris, as I was listening to you, what I was thinking about, I was thinking about the visual aspect of the leadership and its importance nowadays. As I've been teaching for several years, and this is what students are talking about, that they are becoming more and more visual, and we know this from the media preferences, what they do, what they use, and how do they share their experiences, how they talk about their experiences, and the world is becoming more and more visual. And I was thinking about that. that we do, in a way, lack this visual perspective when studying leadership, and that's just going to be very time. And I was thinking about, again, the organizational context. So if we're speaking about the company which would employ younger people, probably you would have a little bit different approach to this compared to the company who would have employees on more varied, different age. So what's your setting for the research?
So we at this point in time, I can't answer that question exactly because we're still talking to the organization. I think you're absolutely right. Thinking carefully about also the make of the participants will be important. And I mean, I have to say, you know, the particular idea of taking photos was, I think, brought to this particular conference many moons ago by Donna Latkin and Martin Woods, who did that at Exeter with their students. So it's not new, but these things, what we're trying to do with the project is maybe shout about it more, but important, because it sort of has not really made its way fundamentally into a lot of research. And yes, I could quite easily foresee different generational dynamics going on. And we'll have to carefully think about exactly, you know, accounting for that. But again, this element of looking across patterns also helps to make sense not only within one, but also across the images, the sets of images from different participants.
I
think there's Johannes, I think, has got his.
Yes, Johannes. Johan, you have your hand up, please.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Doris, for this presentation. I think it's an extremely interesting issue, and that it's in the sense that it brings out language and sort of brings up in a new light. And I was wondering, I remember in yours and Gareth's book, Studying Leadership, you mentioned that the word leader comes from a Gaelic word, later or something like that.
Yes, that's right.
Which is kind of interesting to me, as the Gaelic language was historically influenced by Norwegian, Danish, and Swedish Vikings. And we have the word ledare and ledarskap in Swedish, so it's very reminiscent. But bringing that to some sort of question, have you thought about the role of different language groups and how to address that? Because I think that is kind of interesting here, because you would find divergence within different language groups.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's something really cool.
Absolutely. And I'm not sure whether, Keith, maybe that needs to be the you know, origin of the word leader. I can't remember whether I ought to attribute that to yourself, Keith, or somebody else in the wider community. But you're absolutely right, Johan. Ideally, and again, this is where we need to work with organizations, with a particular organization, to see where we're going to do it. But ideally, we want to look at different language families that have very different social, cultural, and historical roots of different versions, either of leadership or leader or not. And I think what is also really, really important is within particular US, UK centric discourses of leadership, there's this really close link to management, and that in itself also does not translate across different language families. So hopefully we will be cutting across different language families. I should have also said that Sylvia Chiuk, one of our project partners, she's a trained translator. So, you know, she in particular will be even, you know, looking out for us to ideally be as diverse in our locations as possible. But because we want to go in this with an ethos of impacting positively organizational practice as well as research practice, we do want to wait and see what is important to the organization. But ideally, if we can delve into and tap into different language families, that would be great. Thanks, Johan.
Unfortunately, we're running out of time. We already ran out of time. Time management have never been my strength, really. So I just want to thank everyone. Thank to all our participants, presenters today. So many things to take with us. And thanks for all asking questions and being here with us. And in 15 minutes, there will be another keynote from Keith and David Collinson. So we'll probably see you there. Brilliant session. And thank you, everyone, so much.